Welcome back to our journey through the Psalms. If you've been following along, you know that Psalm 1 gave us the blueprint for a rooted life, and Psalm 2 showed us God's ultimate authority over global chaos. But today, with Psalm 3, everything changes. The camera zooms entirely in, moving from the fate of nations to the raw, beating heart of a man in deep personal crisis. This is the very first psalm in the Bible with a title attached to it in the ancient manuscripts. It reads, "A Psalm of David, when he fled from his son Absalom." To understand the weight of the words we are about to unpack, we have to look at the tragic history behind them. David wasn't just facing an enemy army, he was facing a rebellion led by his own flesh and blood, his beloved son, Absalom. David had been forced out of his palace, forced out of Jerusalem, and was running for his life in the wilderness, weeping with his head covered. It is from this place of absolute heartbreak and vulnerability that David writes this masterpiece. David begins by laying his raw reality before God. Verses 1 and 2 say, "Lord, how many are my foes? How many rise up against me? Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him." Notice the repetition of the word many. David is experiencing an escalation of trouble. It's one thing to have an enemy, it's another to realize that the crowd has turned against you. Historical accounts tell us that nearly all of Israel had shifted their loyalty to Absalom. David went from being the celebrated hero king to a disgraced fugitive overnight. But the worst part of David's crisis isn't the physical danger. It's the psychological warfare. His enemies are saying, God will not deliver him. In the original Hebrew, the word for deliver is Yeshua, salvation. They are looking at David's past failures and his current miserable circumstances, and they are concluding that God has finally abandoned him. Have you ever been there, when circumstances get so heavy and the voices around you, or even the voice inside your own head, start whispering that you've gone too far, that your situation is too messy, and that even God won't step in to save you this time? That is where Psalm 3 begins, in the dark valley of public mockery and overwhelming odds. But right in the middle of the noise, David pivots. He stops looking at the crowd and looks up. Verse 3 and 4 say, "But you, Lord, are a shield around me, my glory, the one who lifts my head high. I call out to the Lord, and he answers me from his holy mountain." That little word, "but," is one of the most powerful turning points in Scripture. But you, Lord. David acknowledges the reality of his problems, but he chooses to emphasize the reality of his God. Look at how he describes God here. First, he calls him a shield around me. In the ancient Near East, a standard shield only protected the front of a soldier. But the Hebrew word David uses here refers to a margin, a shield that completely encircles a person, protecting them from every single angle. David is saying, I am surrounded by enemies, but I am even more surrounded by God. Then he calls God, my glory, the one who lifts my head high. Remember, David is currently walking through the dirt of the wilderness, weeping, with his head covered in shame. He has lost his crown, his palace, and his reputation. Yet, he realizes that his true identity and value never came from his throne, it came from his relationship with God. God is the one who lifts his chin, replaces his shame with dignity, and tells him to look up. And when David calls out, he discovers a beautiful truth. God isn't trapped in the palace David just lost. God answers him from his holy mountain. God's presence cannot be exiled. Because David shifts his perspective, something miraculous happens to his physical and emotional state. Verses 5 and 6 reveal, I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. I will not fear though tens of thousands assail me on every side. Think about the sheer impossibility of verse 5. David is a fugitive in the wilderness. At any moment, Absalom's special forces could ambush him. Most of us can't sleep if we have a stressful email waiting for us in the morning, or if our finances are tight, or if someone is upset with us. Yet David, facing military execution and family betrayal, is able to close his eyes and fall into a deep, peaceful sleep. This sleep is a profound act of faith. It's David saying, "The universe does not rest on my shoulders. I can close my eyes because the God who protects me never closes his." When he wakes up the next morning, he realizes that the breath in his lungs is proof of God's active, sustaining power. As a result, his fear dissolves. He looks out at the tens of thousands assailing him, and they no longer look quite so big. When God becomes large in your eyes, your problems naturally become small. With his faith renewed, David moves from a state of rest to a state of bold petition. Verses 7 and 8 conclude the psalm. "Arise, Lord, deliver me, my God, strike all my enemies on the jaw, break the teeth of the wicked. From the Lord comes deliverance, may your blessing be on your people." When David cries out, "Arise, Lord," he is using ancient battle language. This is what the Israelites would shout when the Ark of the Covenant was lifted up to lead them into battle. He is asking God to take action. Then we encounter some incredibly vivid, aggressive imagery. Strike all my enemies on the jaw, break the teeth of the wicked. To modern ears, this sounds harsh, but to an ancient shepherd like David, this is the language of protection against wild beasts. When a lion or a bear attacks a flock, the shepherd strikes it on the jaw to force it to drop the lamb. Breaking the teeth of the wicked means disarming them, taking away their power to bite, devour, and destroy. David isn't asking for personal revenge. He is asking the great shepherd to disarm the predators who are trying to tear down what is right. And look at how this intensely personal psalm ends. David's heart softens and expands. He doesn't close with a curse on his enemies. He closes with a blessing for his nation. From the Lord comes deliverance. May your blessing be on your people. Even while running from his own citizens, David still loves them. He reminds himself that true victory doesn't come from military strategy. It comes from the Lord alone. So, what is the ultimate takeaway of Psalm 3 for us today? Life will bring seasons where the odds feel completely stacked against you. You will face moments of betrayal, overwhelming anxiety, and sleepless nights where the voices around you say there is no hope. But Psalm 3 reminds us that we don't have to live at the mercy of our circumstances. You can face the many because you belong to the one. You can lay down and sleep in the middle of the storm because you are enclosed in a wraparound shield of divine favor. Your head might be bowed in grief or shame right now, but the storyteller of your life is the one who lifts your head high. The next time anxiety tries to keep you awake at night, pray Psalm 3. Hand the battle over to the Lord, let him be your shield, and allow yourself to rest. Because from the Lord comes deliverance. Thank you for joining me for this deep dive into Psalm 3. If this message brought peace to your heart today, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming study on Psalm 4. Leave a comment below sharing a time when God helped you find peace in the middle of a difficult storm. Until next time, stay resting, stay protected, and remember who holds your tomorrow. Bye for now.